Hey everybody, it's Jared Meredith. I'm so glad to be back with you once again to unite in the Word and to share what's on our heart, that it be a blessing to you wherever that you may be watching. I pray that it help you in what it is that you're going through. If you want to follow along with us, we're going to read 2 verses out of the book of Matthew, and we'll read starting at the beginning of chapter 7, right at verse 1. And it says here, "Judge not, that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you mete, it shall be measured to you again." Another way to read that: "Stop judging others, and you will not be judged, for others will treat you as you treat them." You see, in this passage, Jesus makes a memorable statement in criticism when he compared it to pointing out a piece of sawdust in someone's eye while ignoring the log that was sticking out of someone else's. You see, criticism always focuses on the picky little things, small stuff. You see, we take something that bugs us about somebody else, no matter how small that it may be, and we blow it up out of proportion. And this is especially true about people that are closest to us. Rarely is our criticism constructive. And the truth is that we don't often criticize others in order to help them. We criticize in order to make ourselves feel more important. We end up exaggerating the faults of others while excusing or ignoring our own shortcomings. If we're going to focus on the small stuff in anybody's life, it ought to be on our own. We're not advocating morbid introspection, which can lead to all kinds of abnormal behavior, but honest self-evaluation. You see, honest self-evaluation is nothing more than letting God into the details of our life, whether it's our stuff or our personality. And when you do this, you open yourself up to self-improvement. And here's what's going to happen. God will bring your consciousness and awareness of areas where you need to improve. And he will speak to you through his word, as you read it, of course. And God will use people to give you honest and sometimes painful evaluations of your behavior. And through all of these ways, you will discover what God desires from you. And you will be less likely to criticize others. There's a few points that I want to bring out of this today. And I have some of these jotted down. And I just want to go through them quickly and very directly. Number 1, listening to gossip is as wrong as spreading it. When we get caught up into listening to things that may not be true or catching misinformation, and it emotionally gratifies us, where we spend more time enjoying listening to that instead of praying about even hearing what we heard or trying to pray for those that are sowing this type of information, we're spending our time in the wrong area. And one would say, well, I didn't start it. I was just a listener of someone who told me that. But unless we're providing some guidance to other people about the fact that doing that is not helpful, we're no better than the one that was stating it and being helpful in our criticism of their behavior. So if we're not willing to show tough love for someone that is sowing gossip, then we're no better than the one that is giving gossip. We have to learn, when we hear these things, how to be more quick and prone to shut those things down and to have the right behavior to be dismissive of those things that we hear from others. Number 2, gossip should never be disguised as concern. And I've seen that before, where someone may, start in conversation on, I really do hate that this happened to such and such, but did you hear about this other thing? And just dives right into, turn the knife or the dagger in just a little bit deeper on a problem that somebody's already having. And no doubt, it's very interesting to hear about a problem, but if we only hear about it to enjoy thriving in the fact that it didn't happen to us, or that it is such a terrible thing that happened to somebody else, and celebrate the fact that it didn't happen to us only, without showing compassion or concern for someone else, then we're in a bad place where that type of judgment puts us in a seat that we're not even deserving to be sitting in our own without God in our life. It's that same God that when we were deserving of a far more punishable judgment for all of our sin, loved us in spite of our sin and saved us out of our sin. And it's that same kind of love that we have to walk every day in, so that when we hear these things about others, that we're not too quick to judge and we're not too quick to mask compassion for what is truly us just trying to gossip. We got to know the difference. Number 3, I'm sorry is 2 words that have unlimited potential. Whether that is something that we have to say to someone that's closest to us, most often it is times where we need to say that to someone that is closest to us. We just need to take the time to say those words, especially when we need to own the fact that we are at fault in a matter. Continuing to agitate and aggravate and place judgment on others and pointing out their problems is not saying I'm sorry. Fighting to have the last word or the last laugh or proving that your point was right, even though you were still in the wrong, is not solving the problem or making your relationship better. Owning your mistake and apologizing for it will go much further than proving your point or being right at the end of an argument. And oftentimes, when we spend more time fighting instead of reconciling, we're not building our relationship, we're tearing it down. But we're being more destructive than constructive and thriving more in judgment instead of reparation. And God wants us in our relationship building, in our marriages and in our families, to not focus on just identifying the faults in others, to point those out to help ourselves feel better about our own things, but to reconcile, to own our mistakes, and to work together to understand each other's differences, that we may be able to work that out and grow together. For without this, how can we stand together and agree? And I often feel like that we as a church will get caught up at this at times, where we should simply apologize for being in the wrong, and we don't, and we let it go too far, and all of a sudden it causes division where there shouldn't be, when in fact, we could settle it by just simply owning up to our part, stopping our judging, not creating rumors, and not creating gossip, and simply working it out. God can do a lot with I'm sorry. Number 4, people of low ambition are overly critical because so much in life is beyond their reach. That sounds kind of harsh when you say it out loud, but what I really mean by this is, for those of you that are really trying in ministry, or those of you that are working in your calling, those of you that are stepping out to obey the Lord, you will always find those out there, whether you're visiting places, whether it's in your home church, or whether it's on the internet, or wherever you may find it. There will be critics that you were not expecting that will simply be criticizing just to be criticizing. There's been times that I've went back and played back everything that I said over a sermon and could not find anything wrong with it at all, and yet I would see comments here or there, or would be approached by people who would say things that would, kind of hurt my feelings about their interpretation or viewpoint about what I said. And then I look back on it and I'm thinking, well, why in the world would this bother me so much? And then as I would kind of evaluate my criticizer, I would think, well, I don't exactly see them pushing out as hard as I'm trying. I don't see them stepping out and going into the ministry or evangelizing or getting on the path. And the more that you get into that, it can become an ugly situation, not only for you as receiving the criticism, but for how you would handle it by making it confrontational. But listen to me. There are people out there that are going through their own thing, and their ambition is just not there to do more. And we shouldn't punish other people just because they have the right to an opinion and want to express the fact that they don't like something. They may not like your song, and that's okay. They may not like your sermon style, but don't let that get you down. They may not like the way that you carry yourself in church or the way that you worship, but we can't please everybody. But if we can be civil and caring and know how to handle those situations where we face others that could be doing better, that aren't doing better, and that they take that out on us by not letting that make us judge them the same way, we can set a bar for how people should be treated and cause that behavior to slow down and not continue to grow in others around them. Number 5, criticism and finding fault are not spiritual gifts. Now, understanding, we know about discernment, we know about receiving interpretation from God. But what we're talking about here is our fleshly inclination to find fault and be critical of others. And that is certainly not something God has called us to do with any benefit of that output, lifting anybody up in love. I've often found that when we think that we are trying to make a difference, if we have not truly sought the Lord for how we can provide people constructive feedback, we're doing more harm than good just by expressing our opinion by the way our flesh feels about a situation. And chances are, if you're not feeling the love of God or the Spirit leading you to provide an honest truth to somebody, then chances are you're about to make a mistake, and you should probably hold back what you think you should tell somebody else and not make a mistake with it. Because you see, in number 6, a word spoken in anger cannot be erased. It plays over and over again. And it's so true that I could tell you many of the criticisms that I've received my entire life, even some that are 10, 20 years old. I can still remember all the people that ever bothered me my entire life. But sometimes we're easy to forget those people that just told us, the week before or 2 days ago, how much that, they appreciate us or love us. And, it seems like we focus so much more on the criticism than the appreciation because we're always on the defensive. But what God's trying to show us through this is that our words have an impact, and we should be careful in how we express ourselves, especially when it comes to providing feedback to others in expressing, constructive feedback. There's a difference. And God did not tell us to walk around and just find fault with other people. There is a way to give people instruction in love that lifts them up and lets them feel like they can truly accomplish it and not be beat down about it. Number 7, the urge to criticize someone usually comes from the feelings of resentment. And oftentimes I've found that, and I'll just use one silly example. I've been to some concerts where people were immensely talented, and because it was so good and I resented the fact that I was not that good, it would make me want to say something like, well, it was just too loud in there, and it made me not want to appreciate how good it really was because I resented the fact that I was not as good as somebody else. Resentment is a slippery slope, and it can cause us to not show the appropriate support for people that are really trying their best to do the right thing, especially in ministry. Listen, everybody is called to be different, but everyone has a calling that is great. And we have to let go of those feelings of resentment and jealousy and anything that would try to keep us from being able to support and lift each other up, especially in these days that we're in where we face more criticism from the world than we ever have before. And without that uplifting and encouraging of the body, more and more people are wanting to hang it up and give up because they don't feel supported and they feel abandoned and alone in what it is that they're trying to do for God. Number 8, appreciate the differences in others instead of criticizing them. And I found this to be so true because I've heard this said in a different way in church my whole life. Some people may reach others and help them to be saved that I may never be able to reach. Or some folks will be able to sing a song in a way, even though we're singing the same song, that can reach others that I would never be able to reach. Or some could sing in a style or preach in a style or preach in a certain church venue or to a certain number of people or in a certain situation. Some will be able to thrive in it that others may not. And then vice versa. Others may be able to thrive in situations that others may feel uncomfortable about. And we are all provided and given a place where we can truly thrive, whether it's with 5 or 500, whether it is singing contemporary or redback hymnal or Pentecostal repetitive verses, whatever it is that you do well, God will give you the ability to do it. And when we see people that are different, we should not push for everyone to be like us, but we should accept the differences in each other, that we may recognize those moments where something may call for something a little different than what we can do, so that others may be able to step up and do their part effectively. Their testimony may be more powerful in that moment. Someone's sermon may be better than yours in that moment, just because of what God has done in their life, in their calling, in their presentation, in what God has for them in that moment, in that hour, that the Spirit can lead us to know and understand how and when that should happen. And finally, I'll close with this. If you make an effort to overlook the little faults in others, they'll do the same for you. And I found this to also be true. The more that we will be open to one another, the more that we will be forgiving towards one another, whether we fall once or 70 times 7, I believe the Bible encourages us to forgive one another, regardless of how many times that we fail. And I found that the more that we can be forgiving of one another, regardless of our mistakes, and be able to come back to each other as if we had not failed, and with that same love, the same love that came to us when we fail, whether that's 10 times a day or 10,000 times a day, that same love that lets us get back up in grace and mercy, that same love should be shown to others, that when we come back together in church service, when we come back together to work in administration one with another, that we can work continually and consistently without having to face the harsh criticism and irrational behavior of being destructive to each other, without having to thrive in being critical and resenting of one another just to feel better about our issues. Rather, I would encourage us to see each other's differences, know that we all come short, and encourage one another in spite of those differences to do the parts that we know are our strengths. I feel like God wants to call up His church to those who are called to be different, to stand out and to shine, and to not stand and be critical because one may be different than another, because one may be called different in a different way than another, but because that we are different, that we can celebrate each other's differences, whether you are young or old, regardless of your denomination, that we're able to come together under the banner of Christ and make a difference by sharing the message of the gospel and reaching every generation while the hour is nigh upon us, that we can make a difference and let people know that we are a people that loves, and that we are not a people that sits around and judges others just because that we got saved and think we know better. It's that kind of love and perspective that we can give others that can open their eyes to a greater hope, that teaches us that the Bible is not just a book that shows us how we can judge others. It's a book that shows us a better way that we can judge ourselves, to know how we live and how we can do better. I pray that you think about this, and I pray that you share this with somebody that you know needs to hear this, because at the end of the day, the gossip needs to stop. At the end of the day, we've got to learn to be able to get along with one another. At the end of the day, we've got to stop resenting and being jealous and celebrate what makes us different, so that we can have a very diverse and wondrous experience in the house of the Lord. If you believe that, you ought to celebrate that the next time you're in church. And when you see something or feel something that God is trying to do in the midst, it may be different than what you're used to. It may be unique. It may be something new for you, but celebrate it and embrace it. Don't take a step back from what God is trying to do. There is a new and powerful thing that He wants to pour out on all of us. That's what the scripture reads and tells us. So let's not be quick to judge everything that comes by our way. Let's not be quick to toss it to the side and just talk about it and criticize it. But let's come to people with an honest and loving heart, to where if we see opportunities to improve, that we can do that in such a love that we're able to grow together. And if we're in the wrong, let's own up to our side of it. Let's clean up our marriages and our relationships and our friendships and our churches and administration by simply saying, I'm sorry, so that we can move on, forgive one another, reconcile, and come together in unity like we have never done before. I believe that this unique word is for those of you out there that needed to hear it. You may not broadly share it. You may not tell anybody that it made a difference to you. But if you begin to make a difference by the way that you live and know that this is true in your life, I know God can do something great in you. God bless you.